Welcome to this explainer for parts. Look, if you've been eyeing the gorgeous aesthetics of this abstract strategy game, but maybe felt, a little intimidated by its unique mechanics, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to take this beautifully complex game and turn it into a super smooth, easy-to-grasp onboarding experience. By the end of our time together, you'll be fully equipped to set up the board, command your pieces, and actually play your very first match today. Let's get right into it.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so we're breaking this down into 6 clear stages today. 1. The vicar and the goal. 2. The board and pieces. 3. Moving with patterns. 4. The art of attacking. 5. Consequences and penalties. And finally, 6. Grid movement and summary. Stick with me, and I promise it'll all snap into place perfectly.
Okay, Section 1, the vicar and the goal. Because every great strategy has to start with a crystal clear objective, right?
So what makes this game tick? It's the vicar. This is a totally singular piece that belongs to neither the white player nor the black player, yet your entire game revolves around it. You see, your sole path to victory is manipulating the board to push this specific neutral piece across your opponent's goal line. You're not hunting down a king here. You're trying to force the vicar into enemy territory. It's a total game changer.
Moving on to Section 2, the board and pieces. Before we make a single move, we really need to understand the armies at our disposal and the actual battlefield they're going to fight on.
Think of your army's hierarchy like a pyramid. At the very top, you've got one mighty Caesar. Just below that, 2 emperors, then 3 pharaohs, and finally, 4 shahs making up the base. The crucial rule here is super simple. A higher rank defeats a lower rank. But what happens if they're the same rank? Well, in that case, the piece coming from the larger connected group on the board wins out. It's this really beautiful balance of individual power and collective positioning.
You'll definitely want to familiarize yourself with the distinct iconography of the pieces, especially the Caesars. You'll be relying on these visual cues, like the laurel wreath and the sword, to instantly recognize the biggest threats on the board. Memorizing these symbols early on is going to make your gameplay so much smoother.
Now let's look at where all these pieces are going to clash. The board itself is highly structured. Right down the middle, you have the river, which divides the board into white and black territories. Above and below that is the battlefield, this wide-open theater where standard movement rules apply. But pay really close attention to the 4 corners. These pip-marked 3x3 areas are the corner grids, and they have some very special rules that we're going to unlock a bit later.
Okay, setting up the board. You're going to roll 2 dice per player, placing 1 die on each of your 2 corner grids, with the lower number on the left. But the absolutely most crucial part of this setup is our all-important vicar. It begins exactly in the dead center of the board. It starts right on the river, perfectly neutral, just waiting for someone to make that first strategic push. All right, Section 3, moving with patterns. Let's get to the beating heart of parts. The movement mechanics here are entirely unique, and honestly, incredibly satisfying once you wrap your head around them.
Here's the thing. Pieces don't just move arbitrarily. They rely on what we call groups and patterns. Basically, a group of adjacent, same-color pieces has to form one clear, continuous, non-repeating path to be considered a valid pattern. If it's just a clustered clump of pieces, that's invalid. It doesn't form a distinct line. And an isolated piece sitting all by itself, it literally has no pattern at all. You have to connect your pieces to give them mobility.
So here's how it actually plays out. Step 1. You observe a valid pattern anywhere on the board. And get this, it can even be your opponent's pattern. Step 2. You execute your move by copying that exact geometric shape. Your piece mimics the precise zigzag or straight line of the pattern to land on an empty square. Now the path has to be completely unobstructed, and while you can rotate or flip the pattern, the core shape must remain identical.
Section 4, the art of attacking, the rules of sacking.
Now, obviously, just dancing around the board won't win you the game. You're going to need to attack, which in Pards is called sacking. And sacking throws that whole geometric pattern movement completely out the window. Your strike must be in a straight line, either along a rank, file, or diagonal. But here is the brilliant catch. The distance you move to attack must exactly equal the size of the group your attacking piece comes from. So if your piece is in a group of 2, you must strike a target that is exactly 2 squares away. It's math and combat combined.
But hold on, you can't just go swinging wildly. You actually have to check off 4 strict conditions before you can declare sack. First, the attack distance has to be 2 or more. Second, your attacker's suit must be greater than the target's or come from a larger group if they tie. Third, and this is massive, the vicar absolutely must have a legal move available immediately after your attack. And finally, The vicar itself cannot attack, and it can never be attacked, period. Section 5. Consequences and penalties. Conflict in this game is never isolated. Every single attack creates a huge ripple effect across the board, and we need to understand why.
So let's look at how an attack plays out strategically. Step 1 is the actual strike, where you remove the opponent's piece. But step 2, you, as the attacking player, are now legally required to command the vicar. You have to move it on an unobstructed path as part of that exact same turn. This is how you push it towards the goal. And step 3, if you happen to move the vicar into enemy territory, you actually get to adjust one of the board's corner dice up or down by 1 pip. Talk about a power move.
And if you're the one who just got sacked, oh, it's brutal. You suffer a massive tempo penalty. Your entire next turn must be consumed by placing your sacked piece back onto the board. And here is the real kicker. It can only be placed on the exact, specific vacant square that the vicar just left behind. Basically, your opponent attacks you, moves the vicar, and forces you to waste your next turn cleaning up their mess.
Finally, Section 6, Grid Movement and Summary. We've got one last super important exception to cover before we wrap up our understanding of the board.
Remember those corner grids from the setup? Well, if your piece is sitting inside one of those 3x3 areas, you can completely override pattern movement. Instead, you can travel in a straight line based exactly on the number showing on that specific corner's die. And yes, the vicar can use this rule too. Just keep in mind, you cannot sack an opponent's piece while using die movement. This is strictly for repositioning, not attacking.
So, to pull this all together, think of the movement matrix as your ultimate visual cheat sheet. Pattern moves mimic shapes and must land on an empty square. Sack moves are straight lines dictated by your group size, and they have to land on an opponent. And grid moves? Straight lines dictated by the die value. Seriously, take a mental snapshot of how these three interact. It is the absolute core of your decision-making process.
And just like that, your basic training is officially complete. You've got the mechanics down, but trust me, mastering the mind games of the vicar is a lifelong pursuit. Are you going to be the one to orchestrate the perfect tactical symphony, or will your opponent outmaneuver you out there on the battlefield? Grab a friend, set up the board, and find out in your very first game of Pards. Let's play.